This is the Weekly Set, the official podcast of TVEnthusiast.com. Episode 70, recorded August 18th, 2016. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Weekly Set, the official podcast of TVEnthusiast.com. I am your host and editor-in-chief of TV Enthusiast. My name is Tyson, and joining me today, as always, is our keeper of comics here at TV Enthusiast, Will.
Hello.
So today we're going to talk about Mr. Robot, BrainDead, and Peaky Blinders. With Mr. Robot, we're also going to talk about a new mobile game that just came out related to it. But before that, next week, so we record this podcast on Thursday, so next Thursday, August 25th, the podcast we're going to be recording is going to be about the fall TV preview. So we're not going to be discussing Peaky Blinders or any of the other shows on that week's podcast. We're going to be talking...
that's next week's podcast?
Yes.
Okay.
So next week's podcast, I've already started working on the fall TV preview, and it should be up on Monday. And then, we'll start talking about it for our podcast on Thursday. That'll be up next Friday. And then after that, the week after, we're going to continue on. We're not going to do 2 episodes of Peaky Blinders. We're just going to do the next one. So we're going to continue doing one a week. And that's going to take us to our 75th episode. I believe our Peaky Blinders stuff ends the week before our 75th episode. And our 75th episode is going to be in Advocates of Great Television. I think we've decided now that we're going to do a show from our childhood. So something rather old that we remember.
That sounds like a good theme, actually.
And so that's what we're going to be doing for Advocates. That's for our 75th. And then after that starts season 3 of our podcast. Actually, no, season 4. Yeah. Season 4 of our podcast gets off with episode 76 after that.
Oh, our podcast has seasons?
Yep. Every 25 episodes is a season.
Oh, okay.
It just goes with the landmark. So yeah, so that's what we're going to do. So, let's get started off for this week's podcast by talking about Mr. Robot. So first I'm going to be talking about the app/game that they released. I had mentioned earlier, I believe, I don't know if I did on the podcast, but I know I reported it on our news show that, Telltale was rumored to be working on a Mr. Robot game. The trailer for this showed iOS and Android. It didn't show the other platforms like PC or PS4. So, the assumption was that this wasn't going to be their typical, Telltale has like a specific art style and a format that they use with like a bunch of stuff. And the assumption was that that's not what they were going to do, that they were going to be doing something more mobile centric. And that was the case. So the whole thing's kind of packaged like an eCourt messaging app. And that's the whole interface is like an eCourt messaging app. But when you have conversations, you're having conversations with these random people. They're bots, they're fake because it's a game. And you get involved in the social engineering and hacking. So, the game starts with, you find a phone, you decide to pick it up, and then once you pick it up, you're in that, eCourt message, user interface. And that's the whole thing from that point out. And you get contacted by the phone's owner, basically threatening you and saying that there's an important file on that phone that they need, and you start getting involved in that. You end up having to do some social engineering at one point. I contacted a woman and was able to get her credentials by pretending to gaining her trust by telling her, that we needed security questions from her and having her answer them, and then using that as a means to get her credentials from her. So you kind of feel like you're one of the hackers in Mr. Robot. That's like the whole game setup.
That's cool. So what would you rate it? Or have you played it? I don't know.
I haven't played it enough to really rate it. Like the storylines are just starting to start peeking out. There's a lot of stuff that I have no idea what it is yet, if it's going to tie in. I'm sure it'll tie in some way or another. there's like this group chat that you're in with these random people, and you're like, who the fuck are you? and they're like, ha ha ha, you know who we are, blah 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 blah, and they're just kind of like planning a vacation or something. You're like, how the hell is this going to tie into everything? So I haven't gotten anywhere near there yet, where stuff starts tying together more. But I found out who the person is whose phone I have. They're a character from the show. There's another character from the show that I've communicated with. So it's starting to kind of get rolling in that direction. So
nice.
If you guys are interested, check it out. It's on iOS and Android. And I'll put links in the story for the podcast, so you can find them there if you want to the iTunes and Android page. But yeah, so that's the Mr. Robot app. Now let's talk about Mr. Robot itself, the show itself, starting with last week's episode. So neither Will or I were able to catch up with this week's episode. For me, it was a DVR issue. For Will, it's just a matter of time with, it literally airs the night before we record and goes up online for streaming the night we record. But we're going to talk about the week before, which is good because we didn't get to talk about that last week, and it was a big episode, a lot of crazy stuff to talk about.
Oh yeah, definitely a lot of crazy stuff to talk about.
Will, you were like jumping out of your seat wanting to talk about this last week.
Yes, I was.
So, let's get started. It kicks off, it shows the typical, previously on segment, and then when it gets into the actual show.
Then it gets weird.
It's using these old, USA Network, title crawl things or whatever before the show starts. And it kicks in this full-on 1980s. It's even in SD resolution, 4:3 aspect ratio.
Yep. And it opens up at like a 90s, early 90s or 80s sitcom.
Yeah, something that would be on TGIF.
Yeah, pretty much. Complete with a theme song and everything.
By the way, the theme song was actually done by the people who did the theme for Full House.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing, actually.
And it sounds like it too. It sounds very similar. But yeah, you got Elliot in the car with his sister and his mother and father. It's being very played up like a comedy, Christian Slater's character, he's coughing up blood and making a joke about it, how he's dying or something,
Yeah, making a joke about how he's dying or something. Everything's played up, everything's surreal. This is all happening in Elliot's head because Elliot was knocked into a coma from the beating he took.
Yeah, so this is while he's being beaten, basically.
Yeah, this is while he's being beaten, basically.
It's his self-defense mechanism.
Yeah, basically what we realize towards the end of this part of the episode, what we realize is that Mr. Robot kind of takes over while Elliot's taking the beating, so that Mr. Robot takes the beating for him. Yeah,
we see Darlene playing a Game Boy, and we see on the Game Boy screen, it's basically Elliot being beaten.
Yeah.
So this is his defense mechanism. There's lots of crazy stuff to go into in this flashback.
There's
stuff to dissect what it means.
There's a guy in the trunk.
Yeah.
Of the car. We find out that is Tyrell Wellick, in the dream. And there's one point in the dream where he gets out of the trunk and Mr. Robot and Elliot put him back in.
Well, he tries to run away and he runs right into the backdrop.
He runs right into the backdrop. Yeah, he runs right into the backdrop. And they throw him back in the trunk and Mr. Robot hits him with a tire iron, assuming kills him. Now, if that's foreshadowing or, if that's telegraphing his actual fate, we don't know.
We also don't know if this is, cause there was a rumor a long time ago, some fan speculation that, back in season 1 that Tyrell Wellick was another one of Elliot's personalities. And stuff, that's happened in the storyline since then's kind of made that look unlikely. likely because Tyrell Willock's like this wanted figure and this known person and everything. So that makes it less likely, but they keep kind of hinting at that too.
Right.
And in this saying like, oh, he's in the trunk, like he's with, like in Elliot's mind, basically, is the idea. So, there's lots of things this could mean. It could mean that, Tyrell is a separate personality of Elliot's, but it could also be like his father, that he's a real person and that at some point, maybe he died or maybe he disappeared or something, and Elliot is now manifesting him as well as a part of his subconscious.
That could be a thing too. Maybe Elliot or Mr. Robot killed Tyrell, and now Tyrell is another personality or manifestation of Elliot's psyche.
Exactly. Like that's a possibility. It could also be just the mental baggage of, the fact that Mr. Robot knows what happened to Tyrell, but Elliot doesn't. So It's the idea of this thing that's locked away inside his mind. There's lots of ways you could read into it.
There's lots of ways you could read it. That was like the most interesting part of the segment to me. There's hilarious parts of the segment. The opening credits for this supposed sitcom version of Mr. Robot. They show all the characters, the cast members, and they list their real names, like their actual names. And then it gets to Gideon. He's in the opening role. He's reading a newspaper that says Gideon dead.
Yeah. And Gideon shows up later too in the actual thing
Yeah, shows up later. Oh my god. Elliot goes into a convenience store and he runs into Alf. Alf is in this show. If you were to say, oh yeah, Alf is in Mr. Robot, I'd be like, what the fuck? But yes, that is a thing you can say that is true now.
The epic Alf, Mr. Robot extended universe.
Yeah.
It's all connected.
Jesus. I wasn't expecting Alf to show up in anything in 2016, let alone Mr. Robot. Wow.
So, yeah, that's funny. Alf
but the best part is, when Gideon shows up, Gideon is a cop, and he's pulling them over, like a traffic stop. And then Alf kills Gideon.
By running him over, yeah.
By running him over, yeah.
And then he says, I kill me,
yeah. That was as dark as Alf ever got.
So yeah, it's really funny. What's interesting is how they were able to be just so over the top and so ridiculous in this way that you'd expect maybe from a show like Community, but not from a show like Mr. Robot, but then still kind of have this not breaking from Mr. Robot either. Because the whole time Elliot's like, what the fuck is this?
What the fuck's going on? Well, yeah, it's the way they were able to do this, but make it work with the narrative, It's like, it didn't break from the narrative. They didn't break from the show to say, let's do this wacky shit. They actually worked it into the narrative of the show. Mm-hmm. Basically having this whole segment as a manifestation of Elliot's subconscious.
Yeah, and even the Alf thing is explained because when he wakes up in a hospital bed, there's Alf playing on TV.
Inexplicably, Alf playing on TV in 2016. But okay, I'll give them that. I mean, that's not likely anywhere, but I'll give them that.
One thing I could say for that is that I know that Comic-Con channel that opened up, that you can get through Amazon.
Oh yeah.
That channel has reruns of Alf on it, so
okay.
Maybe somebody at the hospital was using that service.
Maybe.
Is it watching Comic-Con TV and an Alf rerun was on?
That's a stretch, but okay.
So he's watching Alf. Maybe it's just some local New York City public access channel or something.
But then again, we gotta remember this is actually an alternate universe from our universe. So maybe Alf was just that much more popular to where it's in perpetual syndication.
Like Golden Girls or something.
Yeah.
So that's a good 15 minutes of the episode is this weird sitcom.
At first I was wondering, is the entire episode going to be this? That would be that would be very bold. If they did the entire episode like this, I'd be like,
Well, thankfully not.
Yeah, thankfully not. Because it was running it lasted longer than I expected it would. Like, I expected the first 10 minutes were going to be like this joke, and then like they would move on to the actual episode, but it like ran for like a good 20 or so minutes to the point where I was wondering, is this the entire episode?
Making it run roughly about the length of an actual sitcom episode would be.
Yeah, pretty much. Like almost, about like almost half the episode, yeah.
So I'm curious, did you get everything in your stream of it? Did you get like the fake commercials?
No, Amazon did not, because I bought the episode off iTunes. No, it did not come with fake commercials. And
so there were some fake commercials.
And I paid for this shit. Damn it.
There was a fake commercial for Budweiser, or maybe it was an old commercial. I don't know.
Said
probably just an old commercial.
Somebody said these were actual old commercials.
So yeah, so there was an old commercial for that, but then there were fake commercials too, because there was one for E-Corp.
Okay, right.
So, and it was like an AOL like style commercial or something, like for E-Corp internet, provider.
Internet, lol.
And then there was like, I think just a general E-Corp commercial too. So there were like
what's
three, I think.
interesting on the show? E-Corp exists. And they've mentioned Apple before. They mentioned Steve Jobs and shit. But I don't think anybody on that show has ever mentioned Microsoft.
Probably because they're just a non-entity now.
But it's like, so I'm thinking maybe E-Corp is like that world's Microsoft.
It could be, but I mean, like I said, the fake commercial they made was definitely like an AOL style thing.
Oh yeah. The idea is definitely like they're the preeminent technology company. They have their hand in everything technology related.
They've connected them to some things that are kind of Google-like. Yeah. But then at the same time, like they've actually mentioned Google on the show as well.
Yeah, they mentioned Google on the show.
And
that's why, yeah.
And there have been like other things, like them being tied to banks and stuff, which isn't very common with like, these big internet businesses.
Like E-Corp's logo, the E. Yeah,
it's like the Enron logo.
It looks like the Enron logo. It also kind of like looks like the Bank of America logo.
Yeah, it does a little bit.
Yeah, so every time I see like a E-Corp like on a bank or something, it just reminds me of Bank of America. I'm like, okay, this is Bank of America. Right down to the bad customer service.
Yeah. I mean, they've even made ties for E-Corp being like a Walmart in the sense that it's just everywhere and takes over, when it comes in and puts everything else out of business.
Yep.
So that like reference has even been made, so it's E-Corp is like this big, conglomerate mix of like all these different kind of, symbols from real things like our shady banks and .com businesses and stuff.
Yeah, pretty much.
All wrapped up into one. But, let's talk about some other stuff that happened besides that weird flashback thing. We got to see, this is the episode where Angela got to go on her mission.
Yeah, Angela got her mission impossible.
Yeah. That was kind of fun. That was like old Mr. Robot. That was like season 1 Mr. Robot.
That was season 1. Yeah, it was good to get like a return to season 1 Mr. Robot. This season has been so different from the first season. It's almost like a completely different show in a lot of ways.
It's been very dark.
Yeah, exactly. I noticed like there's like a kind of like a mixed opinion on the season. Some fans love it, like other fans hate it. They think that this is nothing like the first season and that Mr. Robot has lost its way.
Yeah, I think that's something you see commonly. Fans kind of overreact and jump to these conclusions. I think people almost like want things to fail. I remember when Heroes came out, for example, and I'm not saying this in defense of Heroes. I'm saying it because when
Season
Heroes
2
came
was
out,
great, guys.
No, when Heroes came out, season 3 of Lost was out.
Yeah.
So those kind of were at the same time, and people were like, oh, Lost is over. It's all about Heroes.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like Lost's best days are still ahead of it, you know? Like Lost's best days were like season 4, you know?
Yeah.
So it hadn't even hit its stride yet.
Hero's best days were like when it launched in its first season.
Yeah, like the first like 2/3 of its first season.
Yeah,
basically.
like its best days, and then it was like all downhill from like the season finale of season 1.
But I remember that reaction of people going like, yeah, Lost, they just promise answers and never give them, and Heroes is giving answers and all this stuff. Like, there's so much better. It's like, dude, you're talking about the first season of a show versus a third season.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like Heroes' third season didn't get great reaction.
And guess what? Lost is still fondly remembered, while Heroes is mostly remembered for being that garbage show that had one good season.
You get the same thing even with like Game of Thrones, where like every season you see people pop up and go, it's just jumped the shark now.
Yeah.
It's gone to shit, you know? And it's like, are you kidding me? What about this fucking amazing scene here, this amazing episode here? And it's like, well, that's the exception because it jumped the shark. It's the shit now.
Yeah.
And everybody's looking for like their time to chime in to announce that something sucks.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so, of course, this is going to happen with Mr. Robot. I completely don't understand the kind of hate for it. I think that it is darker, it is different, but it's playing on the consequences of what happened in the first season, which personally I think is great. I love when shows really delve into the consequences of what the characters in the shows do.
Oh, you know, instead just like resetting everything to status quo because you know, we don't want to deal with the consequences of what we just did.
I mean, that's a big part of what made Breaking Bad so good, was like just playing on the consequences, right, and how things just kept spiraling out of control. And, you know, you have to dwell on those things. I mean,
that's why I get annoyed a lot, like comic books or something. Like comic books especially, they like to do these big dramatic things and then reset it to the status quo right after. Comic books, like, they don't want to dwell on they don't want to explore the consequences. They just want to they just want to do these dramatic things and then not have to deal with it.
Well, look at like what Marvel's doing right now in the comics with like Captain America being like Hydra all along or something like that. That's going to be swept right under the rug. And
that is. They're not going to like live with the consequences of that decision, which, you know, funny enough, that would make for far more interesting storytelling if they did. If they said, okay, well, we did this, let's live with this.
Yeah. Consequences, I think, are really important in like a cohesive, strong storyline. And I think that Mr. Robot's doing a good job with this. I'd actually really compare season 2 of Mr. Robot kind of to like season 2 of Hannibal. In that they both kind of went way esoteric and dark in their second seasons. True. You know, I mean, Hannibal was already like super dark, you know, in its first season, but like even more so, and going like more kind of surreal and cerebral in the way it handled its second season. And I feel that's kind of what Mr. Robot's doing right now. I don't think we're going to stay on this kind of path. I think we're already seeing a movement towards kind of stuff we saw in first season again.
Here's the thing that's interesting. People complain that this season is too different from season 1. Well, the stuff that happened in season 1 had consequences that led to that were show changing consequences.
Mm-hmm.
You know, them pulling off the hack successfully and bringing down E-Corp, you know, like messing up the American economy, was going to have a dramatic effect on the plot line of the show.
Elliot back at his day job as a security consultant, you know, like
was good. Yeah,
they weren't just gonna like do that. Doesn't make sense.
If we're going to carry on with season 1 of Mr. Robot, then the hack would have failed, and we would have been right back at the starting point, you know, back at 0. And then it would have been season 2 with status quo if they really wanted to do that. But no, they had season 1 end with the hack being successful. And that, of course, changed everything. Now we're living with the consequences of that. We're living in a changed world from the world we got in season 1. And
almost
people are like
apocalyptic.
Yeah, almost apocalyptic. And people are like, oh, I don't like this. It's too different. It's like, well, duh.
Things are different when you have something big happen. It's refreshing when a show sticks to that, you know?
Yeah.
It's always annoying to me when shows don't stick to that, when they go back to stasis and just kind of go, okay, well, you know, we say something at the end of the episode and everything goes back to normal, you know? It's like, I don't like that. I like these long-running serialized shows with consequences and real character change and development over the course of time, which that's what Mr. Robot is providing, and that's what makes it good.
Yeah, that's what makes it good, compelling television. That the writers are unafraid to shake things up and be like, okay, now we gotta deal with this.
Let's talk about Angela Impossible.
Oh, Angela Impossible.
So she gets in there to do a hack. A few things go wrong. She ends up kind of getting stopped by an FBI guy who's basically just hot for her.
Yeah, pretty much.
She has to think on the spot.
That guy was like super freaking creepy too, because he was like coming on to her really strong, and then when she rejected him, he's like, oh, well, you're not supposed to be here anyway. You know, like, and he starts threatening her, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, Jesus. Whoa.
Yeah, there's people like that, you know, and
like, sleep with me or else.
Yeah, sleep with me or you're fucked, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting that they did that because, it kind of reminded me of the scene in the first season when Elliot was pretending to be a .com billionaire.
Yep, when he was, infiltrating Steel Mountain.
Yeah, and he had the earpiece in, and he was being, you know, given information by his co-hackers. And Angela in the same case here. So like, while that guy is being all creepy, like hearing Darlene and stuff quip about it, you know, was really kind of interesting and funny. And yeah, she ended up kind of succeeding in what she needed to do and got out of there. It was a little tense, but it was fun. It kind of had that like heist caper kind of, feel to it, you know, like that one scene did in the first season, but also like kind of what you'd expect from like an Ocean's 11 or something like that. You know what I mean? It was a heist scene, basically. But yeah, so that was good. What else happened this episode? We had, the FBI agent trying to, deal with, you know, what happened before with,
yep. She's pretty traumatized by what happened.
But she wants to get back to work
she wants to get back to work, yeah.
Her superiors are like, no, you were just in the center of this catastrophe. So yeah, so that's playing into it now. And, the episode ends with Elliot being pulled out of the hospital, into this other room, and then he ends up envisioning Mr. Robot again as like a person and hugs him and is saying thank you to him. How do you read this? Do you read this as like, this is, Craig Robinson's people that took him out and put him here, and then he had this minor opportunity to talk to that part of himself, Mr. Robot? Or do you take it as like he got himself out of the hospital, and him being abducted out of the hospital was like his vision, in the same way that when earlier in the season when Mr. Robot wanted him to throw up the pills?
Yeah.
How do you read that? Do you read that? Which way do you read that?
I think I read that the second way.
As in like he escaped.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm hoping it is, because it kind of feels that way to me, and it makes it more interesting, the idea of this kid that's just so messed up in the hospital getting himself out of there, and kind of like, you know, almost envisioning it as like being yanked out of there by other people and stuff, being abducted. But, you know, that's just him like fighting through the pain to get out of that situation. So I kind of hope that's what it is. I don't know though. So, but that was interesting, and that's how the episode ended, with Elliot basically recognizing the importance of Mr. Robot.
Yeah.
So that's it. Do you have anything else to say about Mr. Robot?
Nope.
So, we'll talk about, I don't know, maybe the next 3 episodes. Not next week, but the week after.
We'll probably talk about the next episode the week after next week.
Yeah. We'll figure out how much of it we end up catching up on. But like I said, with Peaky Blinders, we're still only going to be talking about 1 episode. Not next week, but the week after. Let's move on now to BrainDead, which you just finished this episode.
Yeah.
And we didn't talk about the episode before that either, so we can talk about that as well. in that episode, in our last podcast, I thought you had seen that one.
We got both episodes kind of tied together narratively anyway, to like, there's an angle to which we could talk about the episodes as one, in which the angle is the bugs now, they're trying to start a war. They're apparently trying to start a war with Syria, and this starts where Red Wheatus starts blaming terrorism for the head explosions. He gets the FBI involved. He infects one of his interns on purpose, and then purposely makes his head explode in front of this FBI agent. Yeah. He causes them to abduct Laurel and attempt to put her under enhanced interrogation.
He gets Luke to sign off on enhanced interrogation on his own sister.
When Luke finds out, he holds a meeting, conference, to deter, like an emergency conference to talk about FBI torture and enhanced interrogation.
Mm-hmm.
Basically to get a vote to stop it. He doesn't have the votes he needs. But what's interesting is while that's going on, Gustav and that other woman that he's with, they figure out the bug's frequency, and he uses his iPhone to like track the bugs using the frequency, and eventually he figures out that he could broadcast that frequency and basically make the bug infected people like bump into walls and like raise their hands.
Raising their hands being a perfect opportunity that we knew was going to come up the moment it happened.
Yep. So when the vote happens, Laurel's brother does not have the votes he needs to win. It looks like Laurel is going to be tortured. But then Gustav uses the frequencies to make everybody raise their hands after they voted.
And they make one of them walk into a wall too, which was funny because it's live on TV.
Yeah, basically nullifying any vote and making the voting impossible.
Yeah.
So the interrogation can't go forward, and so they let go of Laurel. But basically, that doesn't stop Red, because he's still intent on using this terrorism angle to kickstart a war with Syria, even going so far as to get these witnesses, these fake witnesses, who claim they're from, like, this one guy claiming to be, like, a Syrian terrorist, saying that Syria came up with the head explosions, and that state-sponsored terrorism, and that they experimented on zoo animals. Oh my god, this was the funny. They experimented on zoo animals.
So like, and baby seals.
Baby seals, yeah.
It was so stupid, and then you'd like see the head of the Democrat side, and she's like, not animals.
Animals, yeah. We get some freaky bug sex in this episode. Yeah, bug sex happens.
With the Rita's and the woman like talking dirty to each other.
Yeah,
the bugs are having sex.
The bugs are having sex. Yeah, that was like weirdest sex scene ever. And then the big part of this episode is the ending of the last episode is like they find out that Laurel's dad is infected, or Gustav gets a signal coming from him. This episode, it starts, he turns around and the signal goes away. Gustav can't figure it out, so nobody can quite figure out if Laurel's dad is really infected or not. It's confirmed later.
Laurel confirms it.
Laurel confirms it, gets her dad to confess to it. This sets up, so now her father is now one of the enemies, which is disappointing to Laurel.
It's sad because she's like in this impression of like talking to him about, like we need to, we can help you and stuff like that. But if the bugs ate half their brains, then without the bugs, they're dead.
Yeah, they're dead.
There's no way they can live. And they're not really alive now. They're just, the bugs have access to their memories.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the situation it's in. Anybody who's infected is already dead.
Yeah, they're already gone. It's It's just
They're bug
bugs.
zombies,
They're
basically.
just bugs now.
Yeah. So, and they have the memories, but that's it. So that's the situation we're in. Laurel ends up finding a way to save her mom because she realizes like, oh shit, I forgot about my mom. And she ends up doing that she's trying to figure out a way to get her mom out of there. And she ends up doing that by bringing up her father's affair and saying that her father is still having this affair, which is part of how Laurel found out that her father is infected was that he wasn't having an affair anymore.
Yeah, I know. He stopped having an affair. Lol.
And so that kind of gave her evidence to figure out her dad in that side, but she ended up using it in the reverse in order to get her mom to get away from him, so that she wouldn't be infected. So lots of stuff going on. The best probably being just Gustav figuring out how to control the bug people. That advantage seems to be gone now. The bugs have switched to a different frequency, so they don't have that advantage anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, the plot thickens.
Yeah, the plot certainly thickens. Good show.
Yeah. So, did you like one of the great things about BrainDead is that, every episode begins with a recap that's like musical.
Oh my god, this episode. Yeah, I mean, like last episode, the recap, it was normal. This episode, it starts with it doesn't do the typical recap, but it does this fake drug commercial for
like a pharmaceutical commercial.
Pharmaceutical commercial for a vaccine against space bugs. Just says space bugs. And instead of singing recounting the events of the last episode like normal, he just starts singing this ridiculous song for this commercial or something,
Yeah. And talking about the symptoms of having space bugs.
Talking about the symptoms of having space bugs. It's hilarious.
So yeah, so that was BrainDead. We'll talk about that again in 2 weeks, probably.
Yeah.
Depending on how everything works out. Now let's talk about our show club. So we talk about Peaky Blinders. We've been doing this for a while now. We've gotten through the first 2 seasons. We're halfway through season 3 now. This is for our show club. So if you want to watch along with us, just hop on Netflix and start watching Peaky Blinders. Catch up. You got, I believe it's 15 episodes. This is episode 15 we're going to be discussing tonight.
Yep.
Season 3, episode 3. Each season's only 6 episodes. So if you want to catch up with us, you got 2 weeks to watch through season 3, episode 4 in 2 weeks, and you'll be able to talk to us about the next episode that we discuss. But today we're going to be talking about season 3, episode 3, in which we get confirmed Grace is indeed dead.
Unfortunately, and Tommy is pissed.
Yeah, it's you gotta feel bad. Anybody that has to associate with Tommy, you have to feel bad for them because he's just on edge.
Yeah, he's just completely on edge. It's like walking on eggshells with him right now.
But for the audience, it's great because he's acting so recklessly now. Which is very entertaining. How angry he is and how willing he is to kind of just do kind of extreme measures now.
Oh
it's, really cool to watch.
He's in give no fucks mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He gets his brothers John and Arthur to they've basically gone and cleared out the Italians in town. They killed the one that John had injured before. They went through and just basically wiped out all of them.
Yeah, basically
either chased him out or killed him. And he's looking for the father of the guy that John Maine that kicked this whole situation off, to kill him. And he's run off, and they find out kind of the general location of where he's going, and they reach out to the contacts in Liverpool, I guess, in order to find him.
Don't forget, Tommy told them to kill his wife too.
Yeah, who was their school teacher.
Yeah.
And they say, Tommy, she's a good woman. And he responds, and then she'll go to heaven.
Yeah, she'll go to heaven. Tommy doesn't care, but they have serious serious objections over that hit to the point where they flatly disobey Tommy's orders on that one.
They let her go, but they take him.
I think John gets up in Tommy's face and argues with Tommy over it. You know, that's really impassioned. John gets really impassioned over it. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tommy is not in a good place with his brothers.
No, he's not.
They're kind of already a little annoyed with him, and then the way he's acting out now, and then the fact that he took a meeting, with Michael and Polly before them.
Yeah.
Was like an insult to them, so they were really angry about that. And yeah,
Tommy
so
says like legitimate business first. That's Tommy's response, you know.
But part of me thinks that he did that intentionally.
Yeah.
It's kind of like his way of blaming John a little bit and Arthur for, you know, because they handled outside of the business, that not only that the guy was able to get through, but that this is like their fault that this happened in the first place kind of thing.
Right.
It's kind of like his little way of like nipping at them for that. Like an almost kind of passive aggressive way of getting at them, you know?
Right.
And, they kind of took great offense to it and they're upset about it. They bring him, the old man who's like praying in Italian.
yeah, he's praying in Italian.
And, Tommy gets a knife and he's basically saying he's gonna keep him alive until morning.
Yeah, he's gonna torture him. He's gonna cut off parts of his body, keep him alive till morning. You know, basically just doing horrific things that Tommy has never done in the history of this series before. Tommy has never shown this kind of brutal, sadistic side before. You know, this is like really out of character for him.
And he's just like, I mean, looking much like the Scarecrow in Batman, looking very crazy, getting right into the guy's face and talking about how he's going to cut his tongue out or he's going to cut his eyes out, and right when he finally decides, he's like, oh, I forgot who I am. I'm a Peaky Blinder. I'll take your eyes. And he's rushing at him, and Arthur blows his brains out.
Arthur can't.
Not Tommy's.
No, Arthur can't take watching that anymore. I think Arthur just decides he's not going to let Tommy do the things that Tommy's talking about. And so he just blows his brains out to just end the whole thing right then and there.
And then John jumps in and says, oh yeah, and we didn't kill his wife either.
Yeah.
Basically saying, like, we can openly defy you.
Yeah, we can openly defy you.
So in that position, it's like Tommy's kind of like lost a lot of his position, basically. As the leader, like he's basically openly defied, at that point. But, you know, he has that kind of moment, it seems, of realization where it seems like he accepts that, like he realizes that he's screwed up. And so he's kind of, okay, so he just kind of moves along. And, what he does is he ends up getting, the name of an informant within the whole Russian situation that he's involved with. And he goes to the house of the Russian royalty that are in England right now. And the priest is there and he joins them in their dinner and is openly hostile towards the priest. In a great way. Loved him saying, I can't stomach food, or I can't swallow food in his presence or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then leaves a clue basically for the mistress of the household who, seems to actually be in charge of operations, and talks to, so that she'll send out the Duchess or whatever after him to talk to him to get information. Tommy basically says, the priest is involved, give me permission to kill him. He needs to die.
Yeah, Tommy hates that priest.
And that, Duchess is basically trying her luck by being a little snappy and snarky at Tommy at the expense of, you know, having lost his wife. And he gets right in her face with a little fear in her.
Oh yeah, he does. Tommy is not going to mince words or actions at this point.
Yeah, Tommy's had enough. He is not taking shit from anyone anymore, and he's making that abundantly clear.
Yeah, he's making that abundantly clear.
So yeah, I'm trying to think if anything else happened. Well, there's, I guess, Polly getting her portrait done by Martell.
That's the thing.
By Game of Thrones actor.
Yeah, I know, right? Game of Thrones actor.
Bashir from Deep Space Nine.
Bashir from Deep Space Nine. Yeah, I know.
So
Game of Thrones and Deep Space Nine.
Yeah. So she's getting her portrait done. He's saying that his motivation for doing it is twofold. One, that she has a complex expression of what did he say? Contradictions. And that he wanted to capture, but also that he just wants to nail her.
He said that was the sales pitch. He said the real reason was he wanted to nail her. Yeah.
So that's pretty much it for Peaky Blinders, right? Is there anything else?
Nope.
Okay, so that was season 3, episode 3, bringing us halfway through season 3. We got 3 episodes left, and we'll get back to that in 2 weeks, since we're doing the fall TV preview next week. So, if you want to contact us to talk about Peaky Blinders or any of the shows we discuss, hit us up, contact@TVEnthusiast.com, or the weekly set at TVEnthusiast.com. You can hit me on Twitter at Tyson Gifford. You can hit Will on Twitter at VoxelHero. You can leave a message in our comments on YouTube, wherever, anywhere we are that you can reach us. You can contact us if you want to address something that we can mention on air or on podcast, or how would I say it? On recording. So yeah, get in touch with us. We'd love some feedback or comments, if any. You can get this podcast on iTunes. All of our old episodes are available on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, so you can check that out. Check out the main website, TVEnthusiast.com. Again, thank you everybody for listening. Night.
Night.
If you would like to voice your opinion, send an email to theweeklyset@TVEnthusiast.com. TV Enthusiast is a part of the Enthusiast Media Network. Stay tuned to TV Enthusiast and the Weekly Set podcast for more coverage